Welcome to Love and Lattes, the podcast designed for women who are ready to stop settling and start living a life full of authentic love, confidence, and real connection. I'm your host, Victoria, the self-love scientist, speaker, and coach, and I'm here to help you reclaim your power, deepen your relationships, and fall unapologetically in love with yourself. So grab your tea, your latte, or your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Love and Lattes. I'm Victoria, the self-love scientist, and today we are here with Kat. Kat, I didn't even ask how to pronounce your last name. Oh my.
Devereaux, like Blanche Devereaux.
Devereaux.
I picked it myself.
All right, we're here with the amazing, the sassy, queer, witchy, neurodivergent Jewish Jersey mama, bear therapist with the flair for tarot, romantasy novels, and cozy sim games. As the proud owner of Phases Therapy Inc. in Richmond and Fredericksburg, Virginia, Kat brings an empowering and compassionate touch to her work, all while weaving in a bit of her humor. Kat specializes in trauma, PTSD, ADHD, gender and sexuality, alternative lifestyles like polyamory, BDSM kink, and more. When she's not unwinding in her hammock chair with the latest romantasy read or conquering her cozy sim game world, Kat is dedicated to supporting her clients and community with genuine care, advocacy, and empowerment, all with a side of humor and sass. Kat's therapy practice is grounded in values of authenticity, transparency, social justice, empowerment, and feminism. A former high school French teacher turned mental health professional, Kat is also a mama of 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a seasoned world traveler. Kat's mission as a healer is to help others lead their most positive, productive, and powerful lives as it means to them, with a love for people and the world in its own vibrant diversity, as well as feminism and social justice that accompanies that. Kat seamlessly balances compassion and sass, all that she does. Boom! Welcome, Kat.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So, what really inspired you to become this therapist, especially with with a focus in trauma, PTSD, gender, and sexual equality?
I feel like we're getting right to my childhood with this first question. We're going to go deep. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a therapist, but had really abusive parents. Dad's a narcissist. Mom has her own trauma, a lot of enabling. And so I personally have CPTSD from narcissistic abuse and that family dynamic. And I remember telling my mom once that I wanted to be a therapist. And this was way before I got diagnosed with ADHD, because I think I was like 20 when I got diagnosed with that. And even later with the PTSD. And she was like, "Are you sure, honey? You know how hard school is for you. It'd be better if you just became a teacher and stayed home in the summer with your kids." Like, that was my mom's response. And so a lot of therapy, a lot of self-work, a lot of, I've had a really wild career path, like having been a high school French teacher for a decade and middle school. And I've done a lot of different things in mental health, but I kind of reached this breaking point with my parents and realizing that I had been abused and that I had PTSD, and needing to go no contact with them really helped me like look at who I was and what I wanted to do. And I've always been a healer. Like, that's deep down in my core who I am, and always wanted to be a therapist and help people. And that's what I loved about teaching. I love the French culture and the language, but I did not geek out over verbs and grammar like the other French teachers did. Don't get me wrong, I love a good conjugation, but like, it wasn't my eat, sleep, live, breathe thing. But I really loved how I could see my kids grow and blossom, because I teach them for multiple years. And that's what I really loved about teaching. And so I went back for a second master's degree in mental health counseling. I have another in educational psychology on top of, my French ed degree. I just went full force into the mental health field. And during that 7-year process between grad school and residency, which I also had a baby at one point, got divorced, sold a house, there's a lot going on in that life period. But I tried a lot of different things because I didn't want to be pigeonholed like I was as a French teacher. That was all I could do. So I've done group work, I've done community, case management, intensive in-home, oh gosh, one-on-one addictions therapy, family. I mean, you name it. If I was qualified to do it, I've done it. I can't like do psych evals or prescribe medication that is above my pay grade. But the rest of it I did. And, you know, one thing that was really consistent for me in that career development, along with my own personal healing, was that trauma piece. And I remember I cried when I first got diagnosed with CPTSD, and it was years after I had kind of cut things off with my parents, and how validating that felt to be like, oh, this wasn't my fault. These things aren't what's wrong with me. And it put everything into this whole new perspective. And like, I've always had this thing in me where it was like, maybe it's my resiliency, I don't know, but where it's like, if I could help make things easier for people, they won't have to go through the horrible shit that I've had to go through. And if I can support them and be a safe space and be loving and, you know, have my boundaries, of course, but help people, that's always felt really rewarding and like has always drawn me. And so that has kind of led me to kind of opening my own practice. Also, I got tired of working for other people for a while. Like, I don't do politics. I'm being neurodivergent and a Jew from Jersey, very blunt. And I don't do politics, and I don't like reading between the lines. So that sometimes made the work office a little challenging. And I've had some really great office mental health experiences and some really awful ones where we had to file with the EEOC. Yeah, so I just was like, you know, in this period of my life, was getting divorced, selling my house, and was just like, you know, I'm gonna make something for me. And originally it started off as just me and kind of having my own thing. I was definitely in this cocoon period. And then I want to say within a year and a half, I had a friend who needed a supervisor and I could supervise. And then I started hiring people, and here we are another year and a half, almost 2 years later, and we're up to 14 or 15 clinicians in our practice throughout Virginia, which is wild. It's crazy to me, and they're all incredible human beings that all align with our values and do it in their way, which is really, really fucking rad. And I love that they have the space to bring that authenticity. So yeah, long story short, trauma is the answer.
Yeah, I feel like that's becoming a very, I wouldn't say it's a hot topic, and I use air quotes, but I do believe people are starting to recognize that they'll get to a certain point in their life and they're like, what, like, why is this happening? And it has something to do that happened many years ago, whether it's through their childhood or as an adolescent stage. And is that when it comes to addressing trauma with your clients, and if you're open to sharing, like, what is something that you're seeing like a common thread? Is it something that's happening for them at a young age? Is it just, you know, I guess, you know, maybe even the politics that are starting to fill in and like create this barrier where people can't seem to break through because of like that fear?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I want to say that everybody has trauma. And trauma is defined as any real or perceived threat of life and death or threat to self, like your identity, your basic human decency. So it's not a cut and dry thing, and it's really individual. You can have two people who are in a car accident, and one could walk away fine and not really have any PTSD trauma symptoms, and the other could be severely traumatized. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think it's hard when you're dealing with like mental and emotional abuse, like I dealt with growing up, that like on the surface, and that was one of the struggles when I first started speaking out about narcissistic abuse and trauma, was that people didn't believe me because they're like, oh, it's just your family, or oh, that, you know, on the surface it looked normal, but they didn't understand that a lot of little T trauma can snowball into big T trauma. And that can snowball into PTSD symptoms. Now, that being said, just because everybody has trauma does not mean everybody has PTSD. You know, when we diagnose, it means that you have clinically significant symptoms that are impacting negatively multiple domains of your life. And we have to rule out, like, is this because of drugs or alcohol? Is this for a medical reason? Is this cultural, or, you know, due to religion? Or is it, you know, is there another diagnosis that better fits that? And we have to go through all those gates and before we can actually give someone a diagnosis. So I want to be really clear that while everybody has trauma, not everybody qualifies for a PTSD diagnosis. I think some people get a little confused with that. But yeah, with clients, I do see a lot. So I work with a lot of queer folks and neurodivergent folks. I think I only have maybe one or two cis het white male clients that come to see me, which is always really interesting because this is not who we normally kind of advertise to, but we're happy to have them. We're all about, accessibility and all of that. So a lot of my clients, especially being queer, especially being neurodivergent, do deal with a lot of trauma when you don't fit into the quote unquote norm, the cis het Christian monogamous middle class white, anything, and male, anything outside of that has varying degrees of trauma, of like not okayness. And I use that ironically. Sorry, my dogs apparently want to join. They just open the door. But that's when we get a lot of trauma and a lot of aggressions and microaggressions. And it's interesting being a Jewish woman. People in Virginia have argued with me that this is not an ethnicity, for example. And I'm like, hello, World War II, where my people were literally killed for not being white. And they look at me like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a person of color. We're from Israel. I know I look white. I'm not. I maybe have like 20%. So I don't, to particularly claim my identity often, but sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my Jewish identity is really important to me. But I have people who argue with that, and they'll look at me and think that I'm the cis het straight queer, or excuse me, not queer, but like white Christian woman, and I'm cis. That's about it in that list. And they treat me differently than when they find out that I'm, queer, or that I'm Jewish, or, any of these other things. And so like the quote unquote, further you get away from that patriarchal norm, the more at risk you are for trauma and for those aggressions and microaggressions in our patriarchal society. On top of that, you add being neurodivergent, and our world is made for neurotypical people. And these are just the ways our brains are wired. And, like school is not meant for ADHD, neurodivergent folks, which includes neurodivergency, includes autism, PTSD, ADHD, and more. We are not meant to sit for 8 hours in the classroom. My fidgety ass cannot do that. I'm sure I'm going to be moving a million times during this. And then we get punished for that. I can't tell you how many times my son, who's 11 with ADHD, has been punished at school for his ADHD behaviors because he's, impulsive, or he's not sitting quietly, or he's shouting out an answer. These are literally diagnostic criteria, but he's punished for that. And he's punished in front of classmates. What do you think that's going to do to somebody over a period of time? That sends the message that they are not right, they're not okay, they're not doing what they're supposed to, that they're bad. I mean, you add to the list, like, it's there. And it is different for AFAB folks than AMAB, but all that to say, like, I feel like a lot of my clients come in having dealt with the stigma that comes with being queer, the stigma that comes with being polyamorous or neurodivergent. I have a lot of AFAB women, socialized folk who have been drinking the patriarchal Kool-Aid their whole lives because they didn't know there were other drinks. They didn't know they had other choices. And we do a lot of unpacking of what the patriarchy has told them is their role versus what they actually want. And there's trauma in that. Now, again, that doesn't mean they have PTSD because of it. Some do. But, I think any time that we aren't seen and valued authentically for who we are, that creates space for trauma. And that when systematically like marginalized and degraded and devalued over time, what do you think that's going to do to somebody's mental health?
That was a powerful answer, and thank you for sharing that. Like, you're right on the money, and I'm definitely behind everything that you're practicing. And I would have to add on, like, I do find that it's very important for people to recognize like how like unique every individual is. And when you mentioned the trauma, it took me a while to recognize that, yeah, it doesn't matter like whether it's something as small. For an example, like for the clients I see, they were told no, or like when they were really young, they had their hands down their pants to explore. Their parents smacked their hand, was like, don't do that. Like you can't do that. And even though it seemed small at the time, as they grew older, they looked at their sexuality or even the idea of, their bodies as, shameful, and it has to be hidden. And so it developed into bad posture. It turned into poor relationships. And just that simple no is just as impactful as someone experiencing any kind of, I would say even something as greater as assault. And I do think it's important for people to find folks such as yourself to address these and get to like the nit and gritty roots of it, which are like, these are these barriers happening in our minds that are not allowing us to fully express, fully live, and fully enjoy our lives.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I completely agree with you. It's and there are ways, like when you talk about your clients, you know, as a mom, like my kids are 8 and 11, I think about we redirect, you know, if those behaviors would start, we would say, hey, we don't do that in the living room. It's totally okay to explore your body, but that's a private place, and you do that in your room or your bathroom with the door closed. We don't do that around other people, and we don't create that shame. And I mean, my 8-year-old understands sexuality. They, you know, both of them understand that gender is a social construct and you know, a spectrum. And so is sexuality, and they understand consent because we talk about these things and normalize them from a young age. And that's so important to like sexual development. I don't ever want them to feel shamed. I want them to be safe and healthy, and I want them to be empowered over their body and their choices and their boundaries.
With someone who's experiencing like, even like, how do you know that this is happening? You know, not saying to you or for you, but like, let's like put ourselves in your client shoes for a moment. How do they recognize like, I might need to see someone, or how can I speak to someone?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for some of them, it's a right away, like, I'm not okay. And it's like, if I have the flu or I broke my leg, I need to go to the doctor. Like it's 1 + 1 = 2 for some. I think for others on the other end of that spectrum, it's much harder, where maybe they secretly want to, but there maybe is a stigma. There are many, you know, different cultures that don't value mental health. And, you know, because of, you know, whatever the culture, like they want them to keep it in the family, or they just don't talk about it at all, or like, you know, men don't go to therapy, like whatever that message is. So I think for some of them, it's harder to get to that spot. There's shame involved. There's guilt. You know, I think sometimes it's a friend or family member being like, yo, babe, I love you. Go the fuck to therapy. Like you're not okay. We love those friends. It's such an individual journey. And part of it too is like therapy is hard work. And I have had clients who come in and sit on my couch and say 3 words to me and expect to be cured. And I'm like, I know I'm a magical motherfucker, but I'm not that magical. Like, I wish I would be so rich if that could happen. I always tell my clients they can tell me to fuck off. I usually laugh. It's a compliment. And I did have a client say fuck you once when I told him he had to have more than 3 types of feelings. And then we laughed. It was great. But you have to be able to work. And a lot of therapists, myself included, have a rule where we don't work harder than our clients do. And the reason for that is because it's not our life. It's our client's life. So, you know, I can go in and tell them, hey, do this. And they'd be like, okay. But if I help them figure it out, that's much more impactful. That's much more authentic. It's more their own. A really great analogy I got in grad school was, you know, I could go into a dark room with a client and turn the light on, or like not turn the light on, but like light a match or light the flashlight, and I could illuminate something for them, right? And then as soon as that match goes out or I leave the room with the flashlight, it's dark again. But if I grope around the walls with the client and support them and like help guide them for them to turn the light switch on, that room is still going to be illuminated when I leave. And that's our goal. And so we always want to applaud anyone who decides that they need therapy, because whatever the journey is, that's a hard place to come and make that decision and feel safe, because it's a really vulnerable thing. And we have it in our paperwork that this is hard work and you are going to feel unpleasant things. And it sometimes gets worse before it gets better, but that's normal and that's okay. And you have to do the work. Therapy is what you get out of it. So if I have clients who don't want to dig deep, well, therapy is not going to be as profound for them as it could be if they dig deep. Now, I have tools. I have my SaaS where I could be like, hey, you said you wanted to come in and talk about your sexuality, but you keep talking about like your dog. Like, I love talking about dogs. We can keep talking about dogs, but I just want to check in why we're not talking about that sexuality piece. Like, what can I do to help you feel more comfortable about that? And I've had that come to Jesus talk with clients before. And I've pissed them off, and I was like, look, you can be mad. That's okay. I can hold that. But like, if you want to get better, you have to do the work, and I'm here to help you do the work. but I can't, like I'm the Sherpa, right? I always mix my metaphors, but you know, I can guide you up the mountain, but I can't make you climb that mountain, you know? So it has to be people who are willing to do the work. And it doesn't mean we dive in, right? I always joke with clients, I was like, look, we are not diving into the deep end and you've never had a swimming lesson. We are going to put on a life vest and the goggles and the snorkel and the arm floaties. And we're going to have a bunch of hot lifeguards and we're going to have a bunch of puppy dog lifeguards because they're so cute in their little hats and whistles. And we're going to do all this. I'm going to stand right next to you and I'm trained and certified and we're just going to put our toes in. That's it. We're just going to put the toes in. We're going to have all of this to put the toes in. And we go as fast or as slow as you want to go, but we have to go. And, you know, and that's where we come in. So we can't do the work just going up and saying, come and look at my pretty face and talk to me about your day. Sure. Lovely. Delightful. I still get paid. Love that. We want to pay our bills, but we're not healing. We're not growing. And so, you know, we always want to help our clients, give them opportunity to work. But at the end of the day, what's that expression? You can lead a horse to water, you know? So yeah, so people, how they get there, I'm not sure. And, you know, I feel like most of the clients that come to us really do want to work. Some need a little bit of an encouraging shove with lots of love. Occasionally we get some who are just not, and usually those people have been told by somebody else to come or mandated by court to come, like they don't actually want to be there. And we can't make somebody do therapy that doesn't want to do therapy. They're not going to get the results. So the kind of the takeaway is like, be ready to work, even if it's slow, be ready to work and be ready to build that relationship with your therapist so you feel safe to work. And find someone who you feel safe with and who you feel like might vibe with you, because that's really important too. I'm a great therapist, but I am not a great therapist for everybody. You know, what is that? I'm not everyone's cup of tea. That's fine because I'm champagne. Like,
Really, you said that though. I think it's important for people to recognize, like in any stage, in any form, any introduction to therapy or like sitting or creating support with someone, like you need to be prepared to learn more about yourself than you have ever learned before. And sometimes that looks like hearing the things you didn't want to hear or you know, we experience like sessions. It's definitely a lot of talking, but it's more like these guiding questions, and they might not like the questions. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. When did you get this idea about like my dad or my mom? And I was like, well, this is what it's apparently looking like. So I'm gonna bring us over here, you know, to address this, you know, situation. And I know it can be very uncomfortable, but that's what we're here for. We're here to make, you know, we're here to dissolve the stigma. We're here to help them dissolve these walls, these barriers, and recognize, like what you said in the beginning, it's not your fault. You know, this wasn't, you know, this has nothing to do with like defining who you are now. However, we're here to make sure you don't stay in this place, in this identity, or in this, you know, fight or fight experience. And I do think I have worked with folks who love working with me because of like what I bring to the table, or just the idea, like the presence, the safety, which is really big for me. It's like creating that sense of safety and willingness to be vulnerable, which I think can be difficult and intimidating in a therapy sense.
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing that.
Thank you. And what you said about like, when you call clients like, hey, this reminds me of your dad and this going on here. They're like, whoa, this is where my humor comes in. I'm like, yeah, sorry, babe. I woke up and chose violence today. And my clients give me this look and I'm like, oh, you love it. And they're like, yeah, but like, ugh. We have this like banter. So I give them up front. I'm like, if you see the head cocks, like something is coming out of my mouth, you have been forewarned. I will reflect back to you and process it. And you can tell me to fuck off. If I get a damn it, Kat, that's a gold star. Like I live for that. It's so great. It's a lot of fun, but that's why I think like humor. I mean, I'm Jewish. We gotta laugh at trauma. We have so much trauma in our DNA. We just have to laugh at it. And so I use that humor a lot to help create that sense of safety and also like help people feel more vulnerable and less like they have to be armed or protective because they are safe with me. And it is my job as a therapist to show them that I am safe, to earn that trust. It's not just a given. It is my job to earn that and show that and model what healthy relationships and humaning looks like to the best of my ability. And so sometimes using that humor can be a really great disarming and bonding tool. And also it's just fun to choose violence.
When you say it, I just think of like, I don't know why I think of a cat and it's like, I choose violence. Oh. So when you were speaking earlier about, aside from creating this like safe space for the clients to really discover and learn more and get really like into the weeds of like what's really going on or like finding out the root cause, what would you say is a healthy relationship look like? What does that mean to have one?
Like a healthy relationship in general or healthy relationship with your therapist?
Hmm. I mean, I feel like you kind of addressed the therapist part, so let's go about the other one.
Okay. So I think I have a very alternative view on relationships, having worked with a lot with the ethical non-monogamy community and kink communities and all of that. And a relationship is whatever is consensually agreed upon between those involved. And it is important to address like any power dynamic, any like ethical concerns. Like my partner and I have an 11-year age difference. I'm 11 years older. I make a lot more money than he does. I mean, he's a stay-at-home mom now, so he doesn't make any money. But when we met, still I made a lot. But on the other hand, like he has this really wonderful family who's so supportive and this great safety net. I don't have that. And these are things that could easily be a power differential. So we had to address like, how can we both come as whole human beings into this relationship together and have this equity? And so there were a lot of conversations around that. But like, I think a healthy relationship addresses those things. It also like, that's the key part too. And one of the things I really had to learn in my own journey was like, especially if you are AFAB or women socialized in this patriarchal world or have relationship trauma, hello, I'm like poster child here. It's really easy to lose ourselves. We're taught as women, and I'm using that as an encompassing term for anyone who identifies as that, to lower our standards for mediocre men to have access to us, to be caretakers, to accommodate, to put ourselves back on the back burner, to always take care of other people. And we're miserable. So many women are miserable because of that. Like we're not nourished and we lose ourselves and we only seem to know our identity through being a mother or a wife or a girlfriend or, whatever. And so I think one of the things about a really healthy relationship is when you are a whole ass human being dating another whole ass human being and you don't lose yourself. It isn't about becoming one. That's actually really unhealthy. That's where codependency and enmeshment happen. You want to stay fully yourself. Your best relationship, your first primary lifelong relationship is with yourself. And you want to make sure that you take time to cultivate that. And so a healthy relationship is where you still have space for that. And your partner has space for their own relationship with themselves. And then you come together as a team. I love that, my partner and I do this, and I'm not saying by any means that we have like the most perfect relationship ever, but it is the healthiest relationship I've been in. So I do draw examples a lot from it. But like we both have our own interests, and then we have interests that we do together, and we're a team. And one of the things he once said to me was, he talked about, he's such a history word nerd, which I find deeply hot. And he talked about the Latin word to compete, competare, I think. And how really what it means is to strive together and to work together to make each other better. It's not to like work against each other, it's to work with each other. And so I think a healthy relationship is you have these two whole ass human beings who are working together as a team, who are striving together as a team to take on whatever their world is, whether that's house or finances or kids or cats or dogs or squirrels, I don't know, whatever's in your life, but you are a team, but you're still your own individual person. And so like having space to be together as a team, to do things together, and having space to be yourself and them to be themselves and to not lose that is really important. And I think that takes constant check-ins. There's a tool I love called a radar meeting. You search multi-amory, it's another podcast, radar meeting, RADAR. They have a bunch of tools out, and it's a podcast for alternative relationships. Fantastic relationship stuff, regardless if you're monogamous or not. Like it's just good. But that's a check-in that you have. And I forget what it stands for, but I know the last one's reconnect. But you have, you go over the business of your relationship, and you have these scheduled check-ins, whether it's once a month or 6 months or once a year, and you go, okay, hey, what do we like? Here's what I like that you're doing that I'm getting from this relationship. What do you like? Okay. What do I need more of? here's what I need more of. Here's what you need more of. What do I don't like that we need to address? Like you go through the business of life, and then you reconnect, you know, there's this whole process. But I think like being able to have really authentic conversations and being able to actually hear your partner, because I think that's where that emotional literacy piece comes in and that emotional IQ. You need to be able to like be able to fully show up authentically as yourself and your raw self, which is earned. We don't automatically start there. People have to earn this vulnerability and this access to us. It is a privilege to earn. We adjust accordingly based on how people behave and treat us. But once that is earned and, you know, that's built, then like having a safe space to show up. There have been times with my partner where I'm mad at him or I'm having a PTSD flashback or something is coming up. And I've had past relationships where they would take that personally and kind of turn it around and be really abusive to me. Whereas he's able to go like kind of remove his ego out of it. And if there's stuff that comes up about him or about things he's doing, he gives me space to process through my emotions and say what I need to say, even if it hurts his feelings. Not that I'm being mean, it's just I'm saying it with love, but like sometimes we gotta say things that hurt people's feelings that we love, right? There's a difference between hurt and harm. And then we'll come back to it later where I'm back at baseline and I like, you know, I feel seen and heard, and he can then come back and say, hey, can we just circle back to this? I want to make sure that we address this problem. You said, you know, this was upsetting you and it's this thing that I'm doing. Can we talk about how I can fix that? Or, hey, that made me feel this kind of way. Can we talk about how to address that? Very future focused. It's taking personal responsibility. It's having boundaries while also, you know, being compassionate for your partner, and being able to work and bend with them. It's, you know, you shouldn't be keeping score. It should be kind of this like seesaw that, you know, always comes back to equilibrium. But again, I think that all comes down to being a whole ass person, dating another whole ass person who can fucking communicate. That's the equation, and who has good emotional literacy. Like, because if you haven't healed your shit somewhat, and you don't have to be like fully healed to be in a happy relationship. I don't like that. But like if you are not addressing your relationship patterns and trying to heal them, or your partner hasn't, you're just gonna be stuck in a loop. And that's either gonna continue and nothing's gonna change, or one of you is going to grow and the other doesn't, or you both work on it and grow. So I think that's where that emotional literacy piece comes in. But first, you got to be a whole ass human being. Don't let anybody take that away from you.
And if you are like, if you've been enjoying this conversation, just take away the fact that you are a whole ass human being. I love that. And I'm really glad like you got into it. And I can definitely tell like there's the way I look at it is like there's always going to be work, and I've learned in exploring my own personal relationships or professional relationships, like we're all carrying our own baggage. It's just the way that you need to address or like say, hey, like this is a part of my history, this is what I have going on. And I think it is important to not only like communicate but establish that line of safety, like, hey, this is who I am, and I refuse to change or even consider like I don't want to say manipulate, it's not a good word, but like kind of like modifying myself to fit.
Your hard limits are versus like what your soft limits are. This is a non-negotiable. And I think this is where therapy can be really helpful, especially for AFAB folks and women, is like we are so conditioned to be like, oh, here's my boundary. Oh, okay, no, that's fine to have you. I'm going to give up all of this. Instead of going, I'm up here, can you meet me? You know, because most of the time men in general will go, oh, that's too hard, I need you to come down here. And we're conditioned to go, okay, we'll come down. No, we need to change that narrative to like step up or step off. Like the way that I would explain it is I am top shelf liquor.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be the only bottle on that shelf all the way at the top than be on bottom shelf muddled with the cheap shit. Just to have company, just to let, no, thank you. Because at least if I'm by myself, because I have nourished and loved this relationship with myself, then I know I'm getting the good shit, right? Like I know that my needs are being met consistently and I'm taking care of me. Now, can I meet all of my needs? No, we do need other people, but like, I rather wait for other top shelf people. And so that means that my other top shelf people, or maybe I can count on one hand, but you know what? They're all top shelf people. I'd rather have 5 top shelf people, whether they're friends or partners or whoever, than 20 or 30 or 40 bottom shelf people that just make me feel icky. And that's not shade to them. Everyone has their own journey. It's like gluten all of a sudden. It hates my body. I turned 40 and the warranty wore off, and now I can't eat gluten. I'm still mad about it. Gluten is great. Dairy is great, right? These are delicious things, not in my body. They make both of those things make me so sick. But that doesn't mean that I'm wrong or that they're wrong. It just means we don't go together. Just like that top shelf and that bottom shelf. It does not mean that they are wrong or terrible. It just means that's not my shelf. And I'd rather wait for other people who are top shelf like me. And so I think therapy is a really great place, especially for people who struggle with this, especially for women and women socialized folk who get this message from the patriarchy, to really get empowered and be like, no, oh my gosh, I'd rather be alone. One of my friends is kind of in this renaissance herself, and I've been the best influence on her because like she'll tell me her dating stories. I'm like, next, red flag. And she's like, oh no, I'm like, we're not making excuses. Like red flag. And then she'll let it play out. She's like, you were right. And I was like, I know. And so now she's gotten like so picky with who she's dating. And we'll talk about these red flags and green flags and yellow flags and all of this. And I'm never like, no, to do this, but I'm like, hey, this would be a red flag for me. I'd walk away. And here's why. And she's like, oh. And I'm like, right. But also part of that therapy process is then looking at your cycles. Are you trauma reenacting? You know, I've been married twice, divorced twice, definitely was trauma reenacting, being, you know, from the narcissistic love I got from my dad. I've had to break that cycle. You know, I had to look at my own patterns, my own defense mechanisms, the things that I did, the dances, so to speak, that I would look for in relationships. And therapy really helped me identify that, because, you know, my whole life relationship wise has been a roller coaster. And so my body knows what that feels like going up, with that cresting that hill and that whoosh that comes down and then the crash and then back up. Those endorphins, the adrenaline, like all of those like hormones, my body is addicted to that. And then when I met my current partner, and he's like an Amtrak train, which like in comparison is really fucking boring, right? Like you're like, where's the lead up? Like, what do you mean I can get up and take a potty break? What do you mean there's snacks here? Like, this is so slow. But let me tell you, the slow, long burn, the safe, boring Amtrak is the most fulfilling relationship I've ever had in my life, and the safest that I have ever felt. And that's not to say we don't have fun. I have not laughed as hard in the last 3 years with him that I have, I think, ever in my life. Like, he's a chaos goblin and we love this. And it's wonderful, but my body didn't know what to do with that. And I remember like, I was at my doctor's a couple of years ago, and she was just, I think I was dealing with some like situational depression, and she was just checking in. She's like, how's your relationship? I was like, oh, it's boring. She's like, what? I was like, oh, no. And I gave her that analogy. She's like, I love this for you. And I was like, right. It's weird. My body doesn't know what to do with it. Right. It's like when you play out in the snow and your fingers get cold and you're like, oh, I have to go inside before I get frostbite. And that process from going from the outside to the inside where it's warm and you know that's healthy, it fucking hurts, doesn't it? Like that feeling going from outside to inside, it hurts, but you know it's good for you. And that's kind of what it's like to rewire your brain from like trauma bonded relationships and that roller coaster to going on the Amtrak. It feels weird. Your body doesn't know what to do because it's used to certain chemicals, and therapy is really good to help rewire that. So here's my like piece of advice. If you know something is good for you and it feels weird, that's a good sign. Now, if you don't know if it's good for you, or you definitely know it's not and it feels weird, listen to your gut, that's something else. Like that's a wholly different thing. But if you do know it's good for you and it feels weird, that's a really good sign.
I appreciate that. That was a wonderful way to like bring this into a close, Kat. I completely like, I admire you so much, like personally and professionally. And I love the work that you're doing. I love that you're definitely like, I'm going to say tasteful, your tasteful spin when it comes to therapy and approaching these things that are not easy. They're really like, it's hard. And at the same time, I love that you get to provide this space. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us. I'm really proud of what me and my staff have created in our practice. We say we're weirdos for weirdos. We're black sheep feminist therapists who specialize in the non-traditional client. So, you know, there's so many cis het white Christian monogamous therapists out there, which is great. People need that. But like us weirdos need other weirdos too. And so we have therapists who understand polyamory and kink and who understand gender and sexuality and who are outside the patriarchal norm. We talk about, you know, social justice and capitalism and patriarchy all the time. Actually, one of the best compliments I ever got was one of my cis het white male client said, it's not a session with me without at least one feminist rant. And I just was like so honored. And then I love when they tell me that I'm in their head. I had another one this week. One of my other my clients was like, yeah, the cat in my head was just saying blah, 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 blah. I was like, that's literally what I just said to you. And he's like, yeah, it was really validating that like, I knew you were going to say this. I was like, it's like the best compliment. I'm just changing the world one white male at a time. And empowering all the women and queer folk and genderqueer folk to just rise up. That's my like goal, my dream. But no, but we wanted to create the safe space. And I think that's why we've been so wildly popular and why we've been able to open a second location and serve all of Virginia. It's just, there are people who feel weird, who society has made us to feel like we're not okay because we're not that patriarchal norm. And we are loud and proud about that and want to support our fellow weirdos with a non-traditional approach to therapy. We're still ethical, we're still therapeutic. We're just like loud and proud about it. And I'm really excited for the work that we're doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and everything else today.
Thank you so much. And I love what you're doing too. I share your stuff with my clients all the time and hopefully some have come their way. It took come your way, but I think it's really cool that we're both aligned with this woman empowerment kind of revolution. And, you know, I think we're seeing it more in like our media and our music and in society. And I'm so excited to see what we burn down and build from the ashes.
Yes, we're rising from the ashes, you know.